how do you know if your product will actually sell in a new Amazon marketplace? In this video, we will show you how to use targeted surveys to uncover product demand, test price tolerance, and fine-tune your creative messaging, all using PickFu. If you want to try this tool, PickFu, for yourself, find the link in the description, as well as 50% discount code for your first poll. And for that, the code is OrangeClick.
Hello, Justin. I'm excited to have you back on OrangeClick YouTube channel today because we're going to focus on how Amazon sellers could validate new markets quite fast by getting insights straight from their target audience from different countries. Before we go more into depth and details with that, could you first introduce yourself and also give us a short overview what PickFu is for those who are not familiar with your tool yet?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lisette. So my name is Justin Chen. I'm one of the co-founders of PickFu. And what PickFu is, it's a consumer insights platform. Think of it as a digital focus group where brands can test any aspect of their product lifecycle. So from as early as branding and concepts to product design and packaging to the marketing creatives that you see on the Amazon listings or the ads that they run. So the way it works is that we have a panel of people where we reach out to them and incentivize them to answer these very short surveys. And so you can test different variations of your creatives or your creatives against your competitors. And they're going to tell you which one they like. They're going to give you a written explanation why and demographic information. And so, yeah, that's basically PickFu in a nutshell.
Very nice. And as I already said in the intro, we're going to talk about a little bit how sellers are able to get insights from their target audience, but from different countries. So maybe let's go ahead and open up your slides, and then we can see a little bit more details about it.
Yeah, so this is a topic that I really love because what excites me about PickFu is seeing our global customer base and seeing how they are able to test and validate against audiences that are not their own. And I think it's incredibly useful because you can make the argument that if you're selling into your own country, that, yeah, you have a little bit more cultural sensitivity, maybe you know it a little bit better. Obviously, I would still advocate that you test, but I think this is even more important if you're testing into an audience that is not your own. And so that is a lot of us now that we're kind of, everything's global, everything's online. And this even applies to us as we're catering to different customers in different countries with different languages. So I really love this topic. So here's the list that we have today. And so we got 13. We're kind of all over on all the major Amazon marketplaces. So obviously things like the UK, Germany, Japan, Australia, Mexico. Some of these are more up and coming Amazon marketplaces, but that they are trying to push into. And so as we start to see more sellers trying to sell into different marketplaces, we try to add the ones that are going to be relevant to them. And something to note is that when we target these audiences, they are given a experience that is in their native language. And so, for Germany, the whole response form is in German. The question we translate into German. You could write it in German if you know how to do that, and we won't touch it. But if you don't know how to do it, we'll translate it for you. And then all the responses are collected in their native language as well. And so we will auto-translate it back into whatever language you desire to see it in. But yeah, so, why is this important? It may be obvious, but I think it's important to highlight that there's different cultures, different languages, different buying behaviors that I think a lot of people just don't think about when they're kind of in their own bubble. And so, one customer was telling me about a situation where he was selling water pitchers, for your fridge, and he wanted to enter the Japanese market with something that he was already selling in America. But one of the things that he encountered was that the Japanese fridges are much smaller. And they also just don't store like the huge amount of liquids that the Americans typically do, where they maybe want gallons or, even more for their water pitchers. And they wanted something much more streamlined that could fit into their smaller fridges. And so it just didn't sell. And so this is one of those situations where if you don't really know your market or the way that they live their life, it's going to really make a real impact on how your product is going to do. Just because it's Amazon doesn't mean it's going to perform similarly to the way that you're used to in your home market. The other aspect is now that the kind of the global market is in flux with tariffs shifting and I think we're seeing more brands being open to selling into different marketplaces. They just at least want to test the water. But I would definitely advise to not just test it blindly and just, throw your product all over the place. Definitely be intentional with the ones that are going to match where the branding might resonate, where the product is going to fit into their, usual life and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, you don't want to have to change too much if you're just trying to do different markets, but that's where you can test with these hypothetical tests against real audience members, whether or not it's going to do well. And maybe you're going to find a cultural fit for the way your product is already positioned, which might lead to, being able to sell it without too much variation. So I'm going to walk through a few different types of polls that you could run on PickFu. First, we're going to talk about some of the branding and brand story and brand store type polls. Then we're going to talk about how to test creative fit and the different marketplaces, and then some more open-ended stuff where we talk about buying intent. So here's an interesting example where I just took screenshots of different brand stores and tested them against the US audience and the German audience. And you'll see that they perform quite differently, with the US audience preferring this brand store and then the German audience preferring this brand store. And I think this, they're all very, very nice looking stores, but I think this goes to show you that just because something is going to work in one market is not necessarily going to work in another one. And this is a really easy test to do. If you've already got a brand store up, take a screenshot, test it against your competitors, test it against the competitors that are in your new market. Your existing competitors in the US may not be in the German market, so maybe go find the top ones there and just see how it looks. Obviously, yours may not be tailored yet, but it'll give you an indication of what people are looking for, because people will call out things, like maybe they like the way that certain models look or the way that products are positioned. Different cultures have different preferences in that regard. Here's another one for women's clothing. And I remember reading through some of these responses, and I remember the US one, like the much more professional kind of workwear. And then it was interesting because the German audience actually preferred to see these models in particular. And so, I'd obviously do more research, do more testing on it. But again, it was interesting to see the performance difference between these types of tests. So another important thing is that, and you can't read this this is image is too small, but I'll show you in the poll afterwards. But it's really important to test, the copy, right? And so this is actually a Chinese brand that was testing against the US market, because, it works in all the different directions. And the issue that you will see when we zoom in later is that the copy just has bad grammar, kind of weird punctuation, and that feels really awkward, and it makes it kind of obvious that this is not a US-based brand. But that would go the same if I were to put up something in Germany and I didn't have the right translations, or using the right slang and things like that, right? So like there's a lot of different ways that people use the wording. Obviously, I think a lot of people are resorting to AI translation, but you still need to get actual humans to kind of validate those translations, because a lot of times they may do a very literal translation of things, and if you're using certain terminology, that may not translate very well. You can actually use PickFu to validate some of this translation, and we've done that in the past, where you could take the AI translation and then go ask those, let's say, German folks, like, hey, how does this copy read? What are some of the words that are awkward? And the same for this. The Chinese company could ask the English speakers to kind of rephrase and give feedback on some of the things that are awkward here. So the bigger thing is of course brand name and logos, making sure that things are going to resonate. This is testing against 15 German women, and making sure that your brand name is not going to be offensive. The translation is not going to sound really awkward. I think this is an easy mistake that I think there's a lot of famous ones in history where things just don't translate because like they sound really weird in slang in different countries. And so a lot of times you do need to launch with a different brand, and maybe that's not something you're looking to do, so that may be a reason not to pursue that particular country or language at this time. if you're not willing to make that investment. So this is a really easy test that I think anyone should do before they go into a different country that they're not familiar with. So here's an interesting one where we did a click test of search results of I think the search term was loungewear for women, and so just kind of seeing what's out there in the market, as you're trying to evaluate if your particular line or your creatives are going to match up with what the expectation is for your target audience. And so you may see different preferences in, the types of models that are used, or even the clothing styles, or the ways that things are laid out. And so this is a really interesting test in the very beginning to kind of get a overview of the kind of the market dynamics and what people are gravitating towards in your target market. So a new test that we're launching is a 5-second test. And if you're this is a popular test in user design and kind of traditional marketing, but basically you show an image for 5 seconds and then you take it away, and then you ask them like what they remember about it. And so there's a lot of different ways you could use this. But I decided to use this in on one of the secondary images from a protein drink. And I just wanted to show, like what was the takeaway from this image. Interestingly enough, like a lot of people couldn't really tell that it was a protein drink. They thought it was something around McLaren and an energy performance drink, which I would guess as well, because, that's what it seems like. So, I know this is a secondary image and it kind of is supporting the other stuff, but I think it's a good example of how you want to make sure that people are taking away from your image what your intent of that image was. And a lot of times when you have different images in your image stack, you have a reason why that image is there, right? Like either you're showing off the nutritional facts, or you want to emphasize how safe it is, or how easy to use it is, or whatever it is. And so doing a test like this to kind of get a sense of what their takeaway from an image is and what they're remembering, I think is really important, because they are going to flip through, even faster than 5 seconds. It's probably half a second. And so you really need to make sure that you're making the right impact. Otherwise, you're kind of just wasting your money on those images. Here's another one where we're just testing it on protein. And I think it's interesting because there's a lot of different ways that in this case, like nutritional supplements are packaged. So, whether it's the bottle containers versus the bags. And I think there's I've definitely seen cultural preferences for, one format versus the other. So I think like that's one thing that I've noticed in some of the responses, and even as I looked at products across different marketplaces. And so as you're going into a new market, just because, you're used to selling giant 3-pound, containers to Americans, that's likely not the situation for a lot of other places. I know a lot of other European countries are more environmentally conscious. They probably don't want so much plastic. They probably want to use a smaller form factor, like a bag. And then even on the marketing claims that are on the packaging, I know that a lot of times there's a lot of culture differences around, Americans like to see very kind of like boastful claims, like much more marketing-ish. And then I think other cultures like to see a little bit more factual information. They don't like to see the hyperbole of like the crazy marketing stuff that is typically on American stuff. So, you start to get a sense of this when you start looking, even if your product's not in the marketplace, just taking snapshots of the marketplace and kind of getting a sense what people are gravitating towards, and hearing from their own words what they like and dislike about the products in the marketplace. Another one you could do is price sensitivity. So if you have no clue how you want to price it, and you want to, maybe your product as is in your current form doesn't really exist in the marketplace, so you can put up an image and just ask people for a price range, and that'll kind of give you a sense of where you could be pricing it in the marketplace. And that might also give you a sense if this is going to be worthwhile for you, based off the unit economics of the product and how much it's going to cost to ship and all the, tariffs and all this kind of stuff, if you even want to go into it. The worst case scenario is that you go into it and you have to keep lowering your price, and you start losing money on it. So, the more you can collect information on this, ahead of time, the better. And you could also use a mockup tool. I can show that later, but you could actually mock up the listings at different hypothetical price points against your competitors, and also test it out so that you can get a sense of whether or not you're going to be price competitive going into a new market. And a new feature that I wanted to share is actually image sets. And so I'll share this when we get into the live demo, but we're actually able to test entire sets of images against each other. So this could be against your competitors, or it could be different variations of image sets that you're working on. And yeah, I'll walk through this particular survey right after this, actually, because I think this survey is interesting because it's a multi-question survey that just tries to get into the mindset of the buyer, trying to understand how a German nutritional supplement user may be thinking about things differently than perhaps like what you're used to.
So I wanted to ask, you showed a couple of different polls which you can set up, but as a brand owner, how can I know that the people answering are actually my target audience? Do you have any filtering system on the platform, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we tap into the same consumer panels that all large consumer packaged goods companies use. So, a Procter and Gamble, when they do longer form research, they work with market research consultants, and they go off and they work with all these different consumer panels, and they manually field these surveys, and then they may also manually go through all the quality and kick out the people. So we do all that in a programmatic way, and so we tap into all the same high quality consumer panels, and we have a 3-layer filtration system where we're constantly rejecting answers based off different attributes, where we're monitoring like how they're responding, like if they're paying attention to it, even if their responses are just gibberish, or if they're not like even answering the question. So I would say we kick out about half of the different responses that come through, so that when you ask for 50 nutritional supplement users, you actually get 50 nutritional supplement users. And so a lot of those different panels will have targeting built in, or if not, then we'll build our own layer of targeting on top of that based off the questions that they answer for us. And so we do have about, I think, 90 different targeting traits. If there's a targeting on there that is not, that you're looking for that we don't have, definitely let us know, and we can add it. A lot of the targeting that we've added has been from customer feedback. So, a few years ago, someone asked, "Hey, can I target nutritional supplement users?" And so that's how we added that, and now we're able to offer it across all the different countries.
Okay, yeah, very good to learn how that mechanism works in the background, because yeah, obviously we don't see it right now from the slide.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, and now you're going to show us what this exactly.
So here was that first one, which is a multi-question survey, and so and traditionally we've always talked about just like really quick single question surveys. But I think as people are getting more sophisticated, and they're trying to do a little bit more psychographic research into their audience, they want multiple questions, and be able to stack kind of questions on each other. So, as you're trying to understand a new target audience, using the open-ended question to just get behind their thought process, I think is really invaluable. So here's one that I ran, asking just a really open-ended question: what are the top factors you consider when you're choosing a protein powder? And this is a really helpful question, I think, that's important to ask in every market, including your home market. But I think this could differ, and what that impacts is, what the claims you make on your main image. What kind of secondary images are you going to prioritize? Some people may think about the ingredients more than others, who may think about the value or the price or the impact. And so I think it's important to hear it from their own voice. Another open-ended question that I like doing for brands, is like where they're learning about certain products. Because as you're going into a new market, you may not be familiar with the different channels or the different influencers, or, a lot of times people are doing marketing off Amazon. And so where do you go for that? So who are the people that you follow in the fitness industry? Obviously, that's going to change country by country, language by language. So there's a lot of interesting open-ended questions you can do to kind of get into the psyche of your target buyer. A couple other ones here. So this is just trying to get a sense of some of the top main images in that marketplace. Here's the image sets that I was talking about. In this case, I actually took two of the top selling German ones. And then I took a US brand that I didn't see in Germany. And I kind of just threw it up untranslated, but I wanted to see how it was going to do. Surprisingly, no one said anything about the lack of translation. So, you know, that's kind of a nice plus, and that would give me a little bit of confidence of like, hey, maybe I'll test it out without having to do that much translation here, because maybe the brand is strong enough, or people are familiar enough with this. So obviously it didn't win against this one, but it might perform well enough. So, that's an interesting data point. Um, Other things as you go into new markets, obviously variations of flavors, designs, um, quantities, all that kind of stuff should be tested as well. A flavor that's popular in one country is not necessarily the flavor that's going to be popular in another country. Um, so the one I wanted to show you was so this, I mean, this is kind of a interesting brand, but you can kind of tell by reading it if you're, depending on how your English is, but it reads really awkward. Like also the word create is capitalized here. And so just small stuff like this, where I think they actually did a pretty good job with the brand name, because it's not some weird brand name that doesn't make any sense, but then they kind of dropped the ball by not smoothing out, the text on their brand story. So small things like this, where they're kind of like, chinks in the armor, right? Where it might have passed as like a very strong non-Chinese brand, but then like once you read the copy, you can kind of tell, and then I do think it discounts it in people's eyes. So really important to try to get the copy right. And then I just wanted to show you here kind of what the answers look like. So in this one, we did test different image sets of dog harnesses against a 15 Korean dog owners. And then you can see the answers in the original. This is what they answered in Korean. And then, of course, you can translate it into any other language that you want. Let me see if there's any other ones. Brand names, incredibly important. Like I said before, you want to make sure that the brand name is not going to be misinterpreted, but you could also test new brand names if you're open to changing it going into a new market. And then another one is just product validation. So, products that may sell well in one country may not necessarily sell well in another. And so this one was interesting because I remember reading through, and a lot of people had different opinions of, coffee's very different country to country. And so I think there was one that said they didn't like a bunch of people actually like the capsule, and this was not a capsule one. So that was interesting. There was one that said they liked French press better. So, maybe traditional coffee makers aren't as good in Spain. I don't know. But this is something to dig into. If that's your thing, if that's your product, you kind of want to make sure that people are actually going to consume coffee in that same way, because maybe they don't want the drip, they want espresso, or maybe the pods are popular everywhere, but you don't sell a pod thing. So, a lot of interesting things to validate. But yeah, so that's kind of it. Let me just show you real quick the countries. So same poll builder. As you go down here, you could select all these different countries. And like I said, if you select a country that is not English, we will auto-translate the question and any content.
Sounds very good. Thank you so much for showing the tool as well. And I'm sure it's a lot of fun going around between these different polls and setting things up. And I wanted to ask, on the platform itself, do you provide any additional tips? For example, how sellers could form like good questions, or what they should ask, like any kind of like insights that would help to get started with the first polls?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you sign in, we have a lot of templates that are pre-built. And so if you're not sure where to start, you could use one of our templates. Like if you want to do a listing audit, we'll set it up. You just add your listing URL. If you want to test main images, we have a template for that. And it just makes it easier so you don't have to write the question. It's already pre-configured. You just drag in the images. So that's one way. And then we do have some AI help to kind of work with the question phrasing. So if you write a question, you're not sure, maybe English is not your native language, you could hit the little wand and it'll kind of run it through AI and kind of rephrase it in a best practice kind of way. So there's a lot of like things like that to help you out. But yeah, that's a good question because I think a lot of people aren't sure how to start. Um, but yeah, the templates are probably the easiest way.
Okay, good. So there's some good initial support.
Yeah.
Right. So thanks again, Justin, for joining me, taking the time to educate our community. And of course, if you have any questions about PickFu or A/B testing for Justin, leave them down below because then we can ask him to come back to the video and answer those. Or just head over to PickFu's website, learn more, and hopefully sign up to make better data packed decisions, not relying just on your gut feeling. So Justin, thanks again, and I hope to see you soon.
Great. Thanks, Lisette.
I hope this video will help you to test new marketplaces before expanding your Amazon business. If you want to try PickFu yourself, find the link in the description and get 50% off your first poll by using coupon code OrangeClick. Also, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel and leave the comment in the questions comment section below if you have additional things to ask or comment. And now I recommend you to watch another video where you will learn how to optimize your main product images using PickFu. So check this out.